Hey, how's it going, everybody? Ted Purchase here, Bold Lens Photography. Today I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys about something. I've recently been seeing a lot of people making videos and Facebook posts about their switch from the DSLR systems to mirrorless, and recently I actually switched last year from Nikon and I switched to the Olympus Micro Four Thirds system, and I just wanted to talk to you about that. Just to clarify for this video, this isn't about why Olympus is better than Nikon. This is really just about why Olympus is better for me than Nikon is. Nikon and Canon may be better for you than a mirrorless system. And another thing is, when we're talking about these switches, I really did 3 switches, not just one. I switched brands, so I went from Nikon to Olympus. I switched technologies. I went from DSLR to mirrorless, and then I also switched sensor size. Nikons have the crop sensors and the full frame sensors, and I went down to an even smaller sensor than crop, which is the Micro Four Thirds sensor. So all those have impacts on my work and all that kind of stuff. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, guys. So one of the biggest reasons why I switched for sure was just the sheer size of the Micro Four Thirds system. I absolutely love how small these cameras are and how small the lenses are. It's just one of those things. It's really made photography fun again for me. I can travel all around. I love to hike. I love to do road trips. I love to go on vacations, and I like to bring my camera gear with me. And it's a big pain when I got to lug around a big old huge DSLR with a bunch of heavy lenses. And just look at this. This lens right here, which was on my last review, this is the same as a 15mm full frame equivalent. So I have an ultra wide that can fit in the front shirt of my pocket. This right here, this is a 12 to 40. So this is basically kind of like your 24 to 70, except for it goes to 80 instead of 70. But this is a pro level, 2.8 zoom that, just an all around high-end zoom. And really, if you look at the size of this, this is about the size as most kit lenses that are 3.5 to 5.6. So, and for macro, I got this little guy right here. It's just, I love how small these lenses are. And one of the biggest things is, yeah, it's nice for travel, but for professional work, especially when I'm doing like weddings and things like that, it's really nice to have a bag like my old Nikon bag here, put that over my shoulder and carry all my lenses with it. With this same bag, I could maybe fit like one camera and one lens into it with my old Nikon gear, but with the Micro Four Thirds gear, I can easily fit 5-6 lenses, a camera body, and a speed light in there. It's just huge to have all that stuff when I'm shooting an event and not having to go back to the table that I have my backpack on or anything like that. So definitely the size is a huge advantage. Some people complain about cameras that are too small, that they're hard to fit in your hands. To me, it's not a big deal, and I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4". I got pretty big hands. These smaller cameras, yeah, I can't wrap my hands around this EM10 Mark II, but the EM1 that I'm filming myself, or the EM1 Mark II that I'm filming myself with right now, I can fit my hand across that pretty good. It has a nice big grip. I could put a big flash, I could put a big lens on there, and I still, I still have plenty of gripping power. On the smaller ones like this, you just kind of hold it with your fingers. You don't want to put too much on the smaller bodies that don't have much of a grip, but there's plenty of, pro cameras like the EM1 II that do have a big grip, or if you go Panasonic, a lot of those like the G9, the G85, those got the big DSLR style grips on them. So never really been a problem for me at all with the size, and it's definitely a huge plus. Okay guys, one other reason, it's not so much why I switched, because I didn't know about this until after I switched, but it's just one more bonus of using this system, and that's this little flash here. It's called a FL-LN3, and this little flash comes with your EM1 Mark II, and it comes with some of the other cameras, like I believe the EM5 Mark II comes with it as well. And because they don't have a pop-up flash, so they give you this little guy instead. And you might be thinking like, well, why does that matter? It's just a crummy little flash. Well, this is why it matters to me, at least. You can actually point this thing up, which to me is awesome. The little flashes, the little pop-up flash or something like this, if it just pointed straight forward, to me that's nearly worthless. I like to diffuse it. I like to bounce off the ceiling, things like that. So just have something that can do that is awesome. And it doesn't use any batteries. It just goes off your camera's battery power. So it's just super convenient. It's tiny. I can carry around. I can carry this around anywhere. I can use it for professional work. I can use it for personal work. It's just super handy. Anywhere you have a low ceiling that's pretty light colored, you can just put this on your camera. You can bounce it up. Don't have to worry about batteries. Don't have to worry about bringing a big old flash with you. Just a really nice touch that they did. Okay, so one other reason why I just really like Olympus is that they seem to be ahead of the curve when it comes to features compared to Nikon and even most other brands. Just to name a few, really useful features, they have focus stacking, so I can automatically stack macros and things like that in camera. I can do focus bracketing, which is kind of the same thing, but I stack it myself in the computer. It lets me take more shots. Just incredibly handy versus Nikon, where I would have to, take a picture, move the ring, take a picture, move a ring. This does it all automatically. Live composite, it's one of the best features that Olympus has if you really like to do long exposures and light painting and that kind of thing. It actually lets you see your exposure as it's developing. It makes long exposure photography easy. You can have a histogram on there. It's awesome. Another thing I really like is a high-res shot. I don't use it too much, but it does come in handy. The other day I was shooting a house and it had a little creek next to it, so I just used high-res shot on that creek and it gave a high-res image, which isn't the reason why I used it. I did it because it actually blurred the image, kind of simulated a ND filter, and it made a nice blur on the water. But there's a lot of people that really like that for fine art, big massive prints, for product photography. It's definitely a huge plus to at least knowing that you have that there if you need it. Focus peaking, that's another big one for me. Anytime I got to do manual focusing, having something like that built in is just so much better than trying to manual focus with Nikon. And that's not even scratching the surface of the features that Olympus has that Nikon is missing out on. One of the biggest ones is Pro Capture Mode, which I don't use, but I see a lot of sports and wildlife photographers using that, and that makes it to where when you're holding down your shutter, to get your focus, it actually takes a bunch of frames before you even hit the trigger. So just in case you miss a little bit before or after you do your burst, it will take a bunch of pictures for you that you can go in there and pick out. So that's just one more really cool feature, and there's a whole bunch. I don't really have time to go over every single feature right now in detail, but if you get the chance, just go online, look up the EM1 Mark II or even the G9 or something like that, and the amount of features you get with these cameras versus the Nikons is just staggering. Definitely a massive plus to the switch. So one more feature of these mirrorless cameras that I absolutely love, that to me was definitely one of the #1 reasons why I switched from Nikon to Olympus, is the focusing system. Now with a traditional DSLR like a Nikon, your focusing is using phase detect autofocus if you're going through the viewfinder, and usually, like with my D500, that was using contrast detect when I was going through live view. Now there's some exceptions, like Canons have the dual pixel if you're going through live view, but the Nikon doesn't. So basically the phase detect autofocus, I don't want to get too much into it right now because that could be a really long video in the future to really explain it fully to everybody. But the main thing about phase detect is at one time that was the best technology that's out there. Point to point, it's really quick autofocusing, great for tracking and that kind of thing. So that's why it's been so popular for so long. The only downside with it is that it can be inconsistent. You have to do tuning with your lenses. Most of the cameras, like my D500, have tuning in camera that you could do. Some of the new Tamarons and Sigmas actually have a dock that you can hook up and tune it to, and sometimes if that's not enough, you actually can send your cameras and your lenses in to Nikon or to Canon, and they will calibrate them to your bodies. which is just a giant pain. It's expensive, it takes forever. I know guys that do it every year, professional shooters, that they take their Nikon, they send it in with all their lenses, and they get them all calibrated every year, and that's just definitely a massive downside for me. On top of that, one thing that I learned personally is even if I did calibrate and tune my lenses and do all that stuff, sometimes they were still inconsistent. Some lenses were just inconsistent, and even my best lenses would miss in just if the light was off a little bit. Like if it was a little bit too dark, my 50 millimeter 1.8G would miss occasionally, and that was probably my most accurate lens that I had for Nikon, so even that had some trouble. So it's definitely a huge downside. And then if you go through your live view, you use contrast, which on the D500 hunts really bad. It goes to get focus and it goes back and forth, and it's almost nearly worthless for even a slow moving object, let alone a fast moving object. So that was a huge pain too. Now cameras like what I'm filming with right now, this EM1 Mark II, it has a hybrid system where it basically combines those two systems, where you're going to get the speed of the phase detect autofocus, but you get the accuracy of the contrast detect. So you never have to tune your lenses, you never have to send them in, you don't have to buy docks or deal with any of that stuff, and they just nail focus every single time. Not every single time, but most of the time. As long as I'm not messing up, they nail focus, and you know, it's just huge for me. There's a lot of times with Nikon where I thought it was my fault, found out that it wasn't really my fault. It was actually, you know, just the lenses weren't calibrated properly, and you know, definitely one of the biggest reasons why I switched from Nikon to Olympus. Okay guys, one other thing that I wanted to go over with you, and I figured just show you here on the EM10 too what I'm talking about. And what's great is that even on the cheap entry-level cameras like this, it still has these features, and this is just something I like to call the mirrorless goodie package. It's something that comes on almost all mirrorless cameras and has been for a while, and the DSLR companies still aren't putting this on their cameras, with the exception of the D850. They finally started to bring some of these to where you could at least use them in live view. A lot of the stuff doesn't work in the viewfinder because it's not an EVF, which is what this is. So if you guys don't know, the viewfinder on this right here, it's basically going to show pretty much the same things the screen. It's just like having a second screen but in a tiny box, and it's just massively better than a optical viewfinder. That's definitely one of the nice things about mirrorless. I can go there and I could review my photos. I can see exactly what my exposure looks like, and there's just a lot of things you could do with it. Let me just show you real quick a few other things before we get into that too much. So for me, the two biggest things with mirrorless have to be WYSIWYG, or WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get, and highlight and shadow warnings. And you could also do a histogram like this. Let me pop that up for you real quick. So you can have a histogram, and that will pop up here, and it will pop up in the viewfinder as you shoot. You don't have to go back and look at it like I did with my Nikons. But check this out. When I'm going to go do a shot and get my exposure, okay, right here we're at 0, so it's pretty good. But if I increase my exposure, you can actually see it increase and decrease as I turn my wheel here, so I can get my exposure exactly how I want it. Now if I start to go too far, actually let me switch this back, there we go. Now if I start to go too far, you could see this red stuff popping up. That is a highlight warning. That means that those highlights are blown and I cannot recover any detail from them. So if I'm trying to get the maximum amount of detail, it's really easy, quick and simple to get the perfect exposure, exposing to the right. And that's all I do, is I just lower it down until the reds are either almost all gone or they are all gone, one of the two. So yeah, just about like right here, and that way I'm getting the maximum amount of exposure, which is plus 1.3, versus the Nikon where I might have just been sticking at 0. And if I wanted to expose to the right like this with a Nikon, then I would have to go take a picture and go chimp in the camera and continue that. With this, I just spin the wheel, I could see it right there, I could see this on the screen or in the viewfinder. Another big advantage, like I was talking about the autofocus system earlier, exact same autofocus, whether you're at the screen or in the viewfinder. Definitely a huge plus. And if you see, if I go down all the way here, then it starts to turn blue. So that means that my shadows are clipped, and I'm not going to be able to recover much detail from those shadows. There's also, there's a few other things, like eye detect autofocus, things like that, but definitely one of the biggest reasons why I switched is it's just so quick and easy to get your exposure, to nail it perfect. You basically don't have to chimp between that, the autofocus system just working. It means that I can just go out and shoot, and I'm not worried about my camera. I just pull the trigger and go. It's just a game changer for me, 100%. Okay guys, one of the other real big things that you always hear about is IBIS, or in-body image stabilization. With Nikon and Canon both, they're two of the only companies these days that don't have any cameras with in-body image stabilization. So you have to go buy their stabilized lenses, which is annoying that you would have to do that. And on top of that, there's just a lot of lenses that they make that just aren't stabilized. Nikon makes very few stabilized prime lenses, and some people say, oh well, you don't need it because the shutter speed's so fast. In my experience, that simply isn't true. Tony Northrup did a video the other day where he's talking about if you're using really high res 50 megapixel camera, that they were still actually getting sharper images with the 24-72 Canon. At 1/600th of a second, they were actually still getting sharper images when it was on a tripod than they were hand holding. So the that notion, just toss that out the window. IBIS is definitely where it's at. It's amazing. You can see I have it turned off right now, so let me go ahead and turn it on here really quick. Alright, now we got it turned on here. You can just see how rock steady this is. I'm hand holding right now, just like I was before. We're at 40 millimeters right now, so 80 millimeter full frame equivalent. And you could just see, even handheld panning back and forth, it's completely rock solid. I love the stabilization on this, and just having every lens stabilized, just even like using this Laowa right here, the lens I did a review of the other day, this 7.5 millimeter, that's a third-party lens, has no electronic contacts or anything, just that I can throw something like that on there and it's stabilized. I can adapt almost any lens ever made and it's stabilized. It's awesome. Olympus is pretty much known for having some of the best stabilization that there is. I can do quarter second, half second handheld shots easily with this 12-40 that I'm shooting with right now. No problem at all. With something like the 12-100, I was actually seeing a friend of mine get 4-second handheld shots with that, which was pretty amazing. So definitely one of the #1 reasons to go with Olympus. So I know what you're thinking. This is just too good to be true. Small compact body, all these crazy features, this mirrorless technology, the autofocus, IBIS, all that stuff, and it's actually pretty reasonably priced. Definitely another reason why I went with this is it's just a really good price, especially compared to the other mirrorless options. I see why people are hesitant to go with Sony. They're really expensive. There's not much used market, not much third party as far as their lenses goes. With the Olympus, you have a lot of really good options for awesome glass at a cheap price. Great bodies too that aren't too expensive. But one of the things is, you might be thinking, so what's the downside? It's a smaller sensor, so it's got to have bad ISO, it's got to have bad DR, no bokeh, things like that. And even though the logic on this may seem a little reverse, one of the reasons why I ended up switching from Nikon to Olympus is that I was actually impressed with the quality of the images and how the sensor size and all that stuff just wasn't really a big downside. It definitely is a little bit, but not that bad at all. when you compare the EM1 Mark II to the D500 on DxOMark, their ISO scores are really close, and that's been my experience. It's as far as high ISO shooting, it's right there with it. If it's worse, it's barely slightly worse, only if you really pixel peep. As far as the bokeh goes, you can see I got a pretty good background blur right now, just using the Sigma 30mm 1.4. And yeah, if you're a big portrait guy, yeah, you may want to go with the bigger sensor, but that's a small part of my business, and I can always get better lenses, you know, the 40 to 150 2.8, the 75 1.8, 42, or the 45mm 1.2. There's definitely a lot of lenses better than what I'm using right now to get you a nice shallow depth of field. You know, the megapixels, 20 megapixels, that's plenty enough to do anything that I need to do with. The only real downside that I've actually had with the Micro Four Thirds system is the dynamic range. I lose about a stop compared to my D500, so that's it's 99% of the time unnoticeable, don't care, but there have been a few situations, especially shooting real estate and taking a picture outside. I live at the coast, so I shoot a lot of these coastal properties, and they want a nice view, and if that sun's out there and it gets real hazy and bright out there with a dark foreground, I need as much dynamic range as possible, so it kind of hurts a little bit. Sometimes I have to use HDR techniques or something like that to get my shot where I wouldn't have to with the Nikon, but other than that, the downsides have been pretty minimal as far as Micro Four Thirds systems have gone, so that's definitely one more reason why I switched. When I was shooting Nikon, I wanted a nice small travel camera. That's when I bought this right here. I just got the EM10 Mark II, and I got a you know, just a couple cheap lenses to go with it, and I was so blown away by what it could do in low light and that kind of thing that I'm like, okay, I need a switch. So I'm actually going to go ahead and throw a few images down in my blog at the bottom of this video. So, and I'm going to throw some low light ones in there so you can see what the performance is like in that situation. Okay guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up, and just to kind of recap, you know, the main reasons why I really switched to Olympus, it really boils down to just a couple of things. Number one, the amount of features that I'm getting and the compact size has just made it so much more fun to go do photography in my spare time. Bring a camera with me everywhere. I can do macros a lot easier than what I used to do, and it's just a real blast to shoot with. And the other thing is, for my professional work with what you see is what you get, and the EVF and hybrid autofocusing and that extra shallow or the extra deeper depth of field I get from the smaller sensor, I just nail focus and exposure pretty much every time, a lot better than I ever did with Nikon, and it just makes shooting so much quicker and easier professionally. It's like cooking with a sharp knife instead of having a dull knife. So anyways, I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, enable notification, and comment down below. If you'd like to support this channel so I can make future content, check out my website, boldlensphotography.com, where I sell fine art prints. You can also donate money at patreon.com/boldlensphotography, and I'll have links below to all my social media accounts. And hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.